Hello everyone, welcome to another Book Review Wednesday, and today I thought it would be interesting to briefly address the American literary classic, The Grapes of Wrath. Now, as you can see, this book is a little bit longer than Of Mice and Men, which is a book that is also by the same author, John Steinbeck, that I did a little bit a while ago. But despite its length, it has a lot of interesting moments within the book and sort of reflects on interesting topics, and at the same time sort of reflects a time period that occurred within American history that I think sometimes people seem to overlook. So I thought it would be interesting to briefly address this. So without further ado, basically the story revolves around the Joad family. They are from Oklahoma, and due to the Dust Bowl that occurred in the 30s and during the Depression, there's not a whole lot of opportunities with where they live, and so they decide to travel to California, which has a lot more land and is definitely more prosperous for agriculture and farming, since they are really originally farmers living out in Oklahoma. So it is highly publicized too, as is mentioned in the story, that there is work in California, and so they tried to go to California to achieve that sense of stability that they once had, which is mentioned in the story, even though right now they're facing such financial difficulty. So they end up going to California, and once they reach California, there is a lot of different hoops and detours and dead ends that they run into. So it's not like a journey where usually you see in books where there's this really long, arduous journey and then there's sort of paradise. In this case, it's a long, arduous journey plus a lot of difficulty and hardship, which is basically what this book focuses upon. This is definitely not a sunshine, roses, and happy rainbow book. Also, there is this sense of difficulty because there are some areas where they eventually are not able to work. Like, they'll find work and then it won't last all that long, and then they have to move again, or there's always some circumstance that makes them have to move, and I mean move throughout California, not necessarily get out of California completely. But there is this sense that there is not as much opportunity as it was made out to be. And it should be emphasized, though, that this was really a big part of the Depression 1930s history, because when the Dust Bowl happened and when you had the Depression, there was a lot of people who thought California had a lot of opportunity, and again, it was advertised that there would be work, and so that's why you saw a lot of people from areas like Oklahoma coming to California. So they do try to make that, John Steinbeck tries to emphasize this point within the book too, that there's tons and tons and tons of families that are basically in the same position as the Joads are. The thing that I think makes this book stand out is, again, the characters I think are very likable, in the sense, at least most of the Joads are. There's some Joads that you will see that sort of, or people that are part of the Joad family that sort of drift away, but for the most part, the majority of them sort of stay together and not give up on one another. And I think John Steinbeck wanted to really emphasize the importance of family and trying to have this sense of fellowship and community that really was lacking all around them, because not only was there not as much opportunity, there was a lot of, I guess you could say, uh, dislike for the people who were coming from the Midwest. In particular, the police, you will see, um, do not, and the locals do not like the fact that all of these people from other states are coming over to try to find work. And they would call these people Okies as sort of, I guess, an insult. Um, so that takes a good portion of the book, and you'll see how certain circumstances come up that result in this kind of hostility. And there is the sense that the majority of the Jodes, though, don't give up. They are very resilient people, especially the immediate family whom we follow the most, the mother, the father, and some of the children too. They seem to have this sense of going on that, no matter what happens, they'll keep going and try to find something. So they do have, I think, this sense of optimism, even though that optimism might not be in within the realms of reality for them. They still seem to hold on to this strength and resilience. And I think that's what makes them. Although I will say that some of them, yes, do some things that probably are questionable. Overall, most of the characters, at least from that family, seem to sort of hold it out and try to really be members of society and try to contribute. And you'll see this when they try to find different places of work, like whether it be from gathering peaches to getting cotton, they try to go and find some place to where they would be taken in and given some food or some money in exchange for food. The plot revolves around them mostly getting from certain points, and you'll see sort of the survival aspect to that, since some of the relatives unfortunately don't end up making it to certain points within the story. And I would say that the ending is actually not all that conclusive. It kind of just ends at one point, and is sort of, I think, a way of Steinbeck showing sort of the tragedy, I guess, behind the whole circumstances. And I think he wanted to really paint that realistic sort of very kind of downtrodden picture that these people were going through during the time. And this time period and the circumstances, although they're highlighted within American history, I don't think we really talk about them as much. But it was a time during the Depression wherein there was a lot of poverty. So to see a work like this sort of address it to this fullest, to this significant extent, I think really works for the time period that it was trying to establish. And I think it really does sort of paint you a sort of realistic picture of what ultimately these people went through and the various experiences that they had. And reading these books, I think, in particular books like these, really do sort of make me grateful that I live in a time period where there is at least some more opportunity, I think, than there ever probably was during that time period and under those circumstances. So it's nice to see a book address it, although I would say that the ending, again, is not necessarily an ending that I would end this book on, especially when there is no conclusiveness as to what ultimately ends up happening really to the family, because they sort of just end at one point. And it's not really emphasized whether or not stability is ever established or not. So it kind of just leaves open a very meh picture. But I think that was sort of John Steinbeck's intentions, so I really can't necessarily blame the book for that. But I'll say if you want to read a book about sunshines and rainbows, this is definitely not a book for you. But still at the same time, I still think it addresses very interesting points. And although there may be some lighthearted moments here and there, it really does try to paint a very realistic picture and a very grim and dirty picture, sort of the time period, the circumstances, and the people involved. And even though the Joes, I guess you could say, are fictional characters, they sort of capture, I guess, the essence of the time period and of what actual people sort of went through during that time period. So I think that's sort of what the book addresses really well. But I think that's really ultimately all I can say about Grapes of Wrath without giving anything so much away as to what ultimately ends up happening and what ends up resulting. But I think it does do a good job if you want a little slice of history, but within sort of a fictional narrative. But ultimately, I think that's really all I can say. But if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year. And Thanksgiving, that'll be tomorrow. And I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.